I was having your boy Rico from RicoScores, and as you can already probably tell, I'm very excited because the Adam Peters just spoke at the 2024 NFL Combine. He talked about what traits he wants in a quarterback. He talked about how the Commanders and Cameron Curl are already talking deal and things like that. Now, it's not to say that one will get done, but they've already started their talks. He's already announced that there will be no franchise tags for the Commanders in the 2024 offseason. So when we're talking Kendall Fuller, Antonio Gibson, Cameron Curl, any of those guys, there will be no tags. Either you straight up re-sign them or they walk in free agency. Also, he broke down Eugene Shin's role, Lance Newmark's role in the front office, and how they're going to help contribute to building a Super Bowl contender in the Washington Commanders. He also spoke on how Commanders coaches, if they'll have any input on draft and free agency decisions. He talked about the plan to rebuild the Commanders, whether it'll be pretty quickly or pretty slowly, thorough, all of that type of stuff. Also, he alluded to the fact that the Commanders will be heavily involved in a lot of trade talks going on around the NFL. Finally, he also addressed past mistakes like the Trey Lance situation. He talked about Sam Howell and draft quarterbacks, of course, as well, and more. But before we dive into everything that he talked about and my analysis and opinions on everything that he said, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Really excited. I have so many. I know I keep saying it, but man, this came out of nowhere. I wasn't aware that Adam Peters was going to speak at the Combine this soon until late last night. So all of the videos I was working on and planning on getting out to y'all last night / this morning ended up really busy. That's why it's taking me so long to get these videos out. But this ended up taking priority over those, and they just keep getting pushed back further and further back and things like that. So make sure you stay tuned because I have so much content on the way. Once I'm not as busy, I'm working on 2-3 videos a day for y'all. So without further ado, let's go ahead and worry about this video first. Let's get it. All right, so let's start with some interesting things that he said just off the rip, some general things. Adam Peters said that the value of the Combine with the quarterback evaluations are medical reports and interviews. Says he hasn't met with top quarterbacks yet. We'll talk about that a little bit later when they plan on doing so. He also said that the team is going to interview a lot of quarterbacks and a lot of other positions. Getting to know the person is the biggest part of any position, he said. Understanding how they tick and how they fit into your team's culture is huge. So that's not only just quarterbacks, that's everybody. We're very big on identity and culture, as Joe Witt Jr. clearly stated in his press conference, and Adam Peters is pretty much backing him up here. Dan Quinn has said similar things as well. We're going to have a certain play style. Yeah, talent is nice. What you are physically is great, but it's all about mental and emotional things as well on that side. Peters also mentioned that the staff and the scouts did some profile tapes, presenting to the scouts exactly what they're looking for in players at certain positions. So basically, he's given the scouts, all of the guys that kind of have boots on the ground, basically an idea, a general outline of what they're looking for at certain position groups. And you can actually give Lance Newmark a lot of credit for that potentially, because Adam Peters even said it after we announced the hiring of Lance Newmark, bringing him over from the Detroit Lions, that's what he does. He's excellent in creating the right process to go in with for the Combine, the draft process, and things like that. So basically, they've given scouts different outlines, certain traits they're looking for and things that they're prioritizing with, again, certain position groups, like running back. What are they looking for in a running back? What are they looking for in a quarterback? They've given these scouts these things and telling the scouts to focus on those things as a priority. Of course, evaluate the entire player, but we're specifically looking for these things. So make sure you take note, and whatever maybe scoring system they may have that Lance Newmark may bring with him from the Detroit Lions that reportedly that he set up for the Detroit Lions. Maybe we'll have something like that, and depending on what those results are, is more than likely going to affect who we end up taking in the draft. So I'm really excited, man. I love the fact that it's not only just the result, but it's also the process and the journey. Is how you get there, not only just getting there. I absolutely love the in-depth look there. Also, Adam Peters said that the Commanders will subscribe to the S2 cognitive test, but Adam Peters did note that it's just a piece of the puzzle and understands what portions of it are important and relevant. And thank goodness, man. Don't believe in that too wholeheartedly, but yeah, maybe it's a little bit useful. Like, I mean, if the margins are very thin and like you feel the exact same about two potential quarterback prospects, and then maybe that's like the last deciding factor, but don't let it be one of the primary things. I feel like that should not even be top 5 reasons why you take a quarterback at all. Now, moving on, when he talked about Eugene Shin and basically broke down his role, he said, quote, "We've had a really good dialogue. He can work with coaching, personnel, free agency, pricing. He's been really enthusiastic. I'm excited to work with him," unquote. And I think it's noteworthy that Eugene Shin was hired here by Josh Harris before Adam Peters was. Eugene Shin is literally the only guy on this entire team that has any effect on who we're taking as far as free agency, draft, contracts, all of that type of stuff that was hired before Adam Peters, that Adam Peters didn't directly hire himself. So that's why I've already been warning y'all that Eugene Shin is probably going to have a little bit more impact than what people expect. He's the only front office guy that's on the personnel side of things, not the business, but like the personnel. Do we go for it on 4th down here? Do we sign this player in free agency for how much? Do we draft this player? How much do we value the tight end position? Should we take tight end in the 2nd round or 3rd round or wait till the 4th or later? Like, Eugene Shin is the only guy on the football side of things that Adam Peters didn't directly hire himself. So it is going to be somewhat of a collaboration. Now, of course, Adam Peters will have the final say on everything. It's his team. But I'm telling you, Eugene Shin will have a lot more impact. It will be a lot more helpful than a lot of people expect. And the fact that Adam Peters likes him that much is huge. Eugene Shin is going to bring his analytical models. I mean, just ask the Dolphins, Jaguars, and Ravens how they feel about how Eugene Shin helped them. Remember, late in the season, this past season, sometime in November, the Dolphins, Jaguars, and Ravens were all the division leaders in their respective divisions at one point. And the Ravens even said it themselves that they still, even though Eugene Shin has been gone for a couple of years, they still use a lot of his analytical models to base a lot of their decisions, especially like in game and things like that, whether to go for it on 4th down, all of that type of stuff. So I'm telling you now, just again, reiterate, Eugene Shin matters. Now, also, another guy who matters, Lance Newmark. And Adam Peters, first of all, handpicked him. Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. That was an Adam Peters. I want that guy next to me when I do stuff. Just like how John Lynch went and found Adam Peters from the Broncos, handpicked him, and said, "I want you to be my assistant GM." Adam Peters literally did the same thing with Lance Newmark. And if we're continuing that tradition, sounds like Lance Newmark, we should, as fans, be higher on him than even just what his resume says we should be, just off of the Adam Peters endorsement. And not only endorsement, but to go find, like, I want that guy is big time, man. And so Adam Peters said Lance Newmark's skill set is immense as a talent evaluator. Haven't worked together before, but Lance Newmark has basically been a North Star for Adam Peters. He literally said that, a North Star, whether it's in player evaluation on the football side and life. He just absolutely just looks up to Lance Newmark and just feels like he does things so well, no matter the aspect, no matter the area of expertise. He also went on to say that he feels like Lance Newmark is very underrated in the football world and that people don't truly know how good he is at what he does. Also gave him a lot of credit for how good the Lions are now. Maybe that was like a petty jab to like Ben Johnson and those guys. Like, I mean, you wouldn't be where you are to have that ego that you have if it wasn't for Lance Newmark helping you put that team together. Of course, he loves Lance Newmark a lot, but again, like I joked about, I'm leaving here with something. And after all of that money and time and effort spent into flying to Detroit to go interview Ben Johnson, to not even get a chance to interview him, instead of coming back empty-handed, they went and got their boy Lance Newmark. So again, he gave Lance Newmark a lot of the credit for how the Lions are now, and maybe he honestly means that, but I could also see that being a little petty jab like, hey, Ben Standig, you are who you are because of this guy, and we're taking him from you. He also said that he's very happy to just have the guy around. So just in case anybody thought that that hire wasn't big, And like I've already told you before, it has already been mentioned that Newmark will be the bridge of communication and basically the translator between Eugene Shin with the analytics and Adam Peters with the football and scouting, X's and O's and all of that type of stuff. Lance Newmark is pivotal because he already has experience. Adam Peters acknowledged this. I believe it was Adam Peters or somebody else brought up the fact that like that was literally Lance Newmark's job with the Lions, to bridge the analytics to the football side, marry them together so that everybody's on the same page. He's going to literally come here and do that. I'm very excited. And then also, just simply put, if AP is that high on anybody, then I am too, point blank period. As much as he loves Lance Newmark, I feel like us fans at the very least got to give those guys, especially Lance Newmark specifically, the benefit of the doubt moving forward. Now, team building wise, he had a lot of interesting things to say about that. Adam Peters told reporters at the Combine that they've been meeting with the coaching staff to hear what they're looking for in players at their positions. So he likes to hear how they want to evaluate players and things like that. So coaches will have some input. Again, Adam Peters is running the show. He will have the last say. He will have the biggest say. Whoever we draft is because Adam Peters allowed us to draft that guy and wanted to. But coaches will have inputs. It's not like he could do all of the work by himself, and I like that. This is going to be very collaborative, but don't get it twisted, man. Don't get it confused now. That boy Adam Peters is running the show. Also, Adam Peters talked about the last few weeks, and he said, quote, "It's a great energy in the building now," unquote. He's very excited about what we have going on the front office and the coaching staff. He's very optimistic about what we have here as people, as a similar mission, as a common goal. He basically feels like he did a great job of putting together a great front office and coaching staff to turn these Commanders into a Super Bowl winner, and he loves working with these guys. He loves the energy, feels like everybody is optimistic. There's just like this spirit in the air, basically, that they feel like that they are truly starting something that's going to be great in hopefully the near future. But they feel like they've done the right first step to turning the Commanders into the Super Bowl winners that we hope they become. Also, Adam Peters talked about the speed of the roster rebuild. He said that he wants to build responsibly, and he said that he doesn't know if going after a bunch of high-priced free agents sets you up for the long term. So just to give you, again, I told you, give you that heads up that he is willing to make splash free agency signings and splash trades when necessary, but it's more so like you already have a pretty good team, and then those are the last final pieces that turn you into a Super Bowl contender. This offseason, even though we have the most cap space, I'm not entirely too sure that we're going to be very aggressive when it comes to rebuilding this roster, because he's already said he likes to build through the draft. And like he just said, just paying a bunch of free agents a lot of money to be great at certain things, he doesn't feel like that's the right way to go about things. So we'll see. I mean, maybe edge rusher, they'll get aggressive there just because we really, really need edge rusher bad. But I'm not expecting us, just simply because we have the most cap space, to spend the most money in free agency, basically. Also, Adam Peters talked about improving the Commanders players' experience. He said, quote, "You guys know how construction goes. It doesn't go real fast." So he's also talking about the fact that the rebuild may not be as quick as people hope, but of course they're working towards that, and they want it to be as quick as possible. But again, like the previous quote, he says he wants to rebuild responsibly and not rush anything, not get too hasty, because first of all, that just sounds like a Dan Snyder thing to do, and I'm happy that we're not forcing it. And then trades. He also talked about potential trades. When asked about possible draft trades, specifically like draft ones alone, he said, quote, "With anything that can happen in this league, you always want to be involved in it. Whether you actually pull the trigger in the end, you want to have all of the information and options." And that's big time, man. That's one of my favorite quotes from this whole press conference that we're going to talk about in this video. Let me explain why. So basically, they're about to get real mixy, and they're about to be networking all Combine week and even beyond that, but especially Combine week, while everybody and their mama is in Indianapolis right now for this scouting combine. GMs, president of football operations, coaches of all tiers and styles and position groups and things like that, even some owners, anybody that is anybody as far as football decision making goes. Most of those guys, the vast majority of those guys, are around in Indianapolis right now, revolving around the whole combine, in and outside the stadium, on the field, watching workouts, behind the scenes, going through the hallways, whatever. And basically, he's like, we're going to be trying to talk to as many people as possible. We're going to stay connected. We want to know anything that's going on. If it's going on, we want to know about it. Even if we're not involved, we at least want to know. And I love that for so many reasons. He's basically like, if there's a trade being discussed or a player or a pick being put on the trade block, Adam Peters and the Commanders will be involved in the discussions at the very least. And I'm excited about that for multiple reasons. Number one, even though it's hard work and a lot of extra effort to be that type of organization that's involved in all discussions, it's definitely worth it because other teams will not be able to, first of all, read you if you're involved in as many trade talks as possible. A whole lot of them could just simply be smoke screens. And then when it comes draft time or whatever, teams won't necessarily be able to read you because they're going to be like, man, they were involved in tight end trades, quarterback trades, draft trades, all kinds of edge rusher, defensive line, offensive line. Like, who knows what the Commanders want to do? They're all over the place. And I feel like, again, some of those could just simply be smoke screens, and it could also be just extreme due diligence, which I'm excited about, which takes me to point number two. Hopefully, this means we no longer miss out on 80% off sales anymore on players or even draft picks. Remember the several trades that have gone down around the NFL during the Rivera era where us fans, we've been like, wait, what? That team was only asking for that in return for that player? Like one of these, like, remember the DeAndre Hopkins trade? I think it was like the one when he went from the Texans to the Cardinals. Like, us fans were like, if I knew he was going to go for that cheap, I would have for sure done that trade, like, easily, within a heartbeat. And what's hilarious but sad at the same time, it seemed like even our coaching staff with Ron Rivera and those guys in front office maybe felt the same exact way. Like they just weren't aware of the fact that elite players were having such low asking prices from their current teams as well. Just like us fans weren't aware. It seemed like Ron Rivera and company weren't either. And I feel like most of that was just simply them not doing their due diligence enough and not putting in the extra effort, going the extra mile to make sure that they have taps on everything going around the NFL, and more so just kind of staying confined to themselves in a small bubble. And I just feel like a lot of the times they just didn't even simply pick up the phone to at least ask or inquire about what this specific player could be going for. And I love the fact that Adam Peters and those guys, this new regime, this is far less likely to happen to us. Maybe we won't be perfect, but it's far less likely to happen. And even just beyond talking the talk, Adam Peters has also walked the walk, because think about it. When we traded future Hall of Famer, left tackle, premium position, Trent Williams to the 49ers for a third and a fifth, I'm pretty sure most NFL fan bases all throughout the NFL were, and even some NFL decision makers were behind the scenes like, what? We could have gotten Trent Williams for that, or even just a little bit more to just to slightly outbid the 49ers. That's all it took. And guess who was on the 49ers who had something to do with that trade when it went down? Our very own general manager, Adam Peters. So with this new regime, basically no stone should go left unturned, and I'm super excited about that. If there's a sale going on, this new regime will at least have heard about it, even if they don't actually go there and buy. And I have full faith in that, especially with the words that Adam Peters gave us. And I mean, you never know when a team is just willing to give up a player for a certain pick, or a certain pick for a certain player, or other picks in the draft for a way lower price than you'd expect. And not only does Adam Peters demand that his staff have the work ethic to comb through and find those sales, but also one of the main reasons why I was super excited about us getting Adam Peters was because people around the NFL love him, man. So we don't have burnt bridges. We're not confined in our own bubble. Adam Peters is out here shaking hands and smiling and chopping it up with everybody. We have healthy relationships with other teams' decision makers, and especially players' agents when it comes to free agency. That's big time. Agents love Adam Peters. I believe there was like an agent survey that The Athletic did, and Adam Peters was literally voted the #1 front office member that agents loved the most. He wasn't even a general manager yet. Now he's our general manager, and now he's going to probably take full advantage of that. And I mean, we literally have everything in place to where if we want to make trades, we can make trades under this new regime. We have healthy relationships. We have the work ethic to go out there and make sure we know about every little thing going on. Any little whisper, Adam Peters and company are going to hear it. Hopefully. Hopefully, or at the very least, I mean, you're not going to know about everything going down, but we're going to try to get to the closest to 100% that we can possibly get. Now, moving on to quarterback, the reason why a lot of y'all, probably most of y'all are even here, he definitely talked quarterback, and he gave us a little bit more information than I expected. I thought he would keep it a little bit more surface, but he dove a little bit deeper, and I'm happy about that. Let's dive into it. So Peters said that there's so much nuance to the quarterback position. Obviously, tape is important, and it is. Of course it's important. But he said that there's more layers to that. So keep that in mind. He also talked about his conversations with Cliff Kingsbury, even talked about Caleb Williams with Cliff Kingsbury. So maybe that's a potential trade that they're looking into. You never know. But he also says that him and Cliff Kingsbury talked about quarterbacks in general and that they're looking at all options. He said that he even met and talked with Sam Howell too, and that he feels really good about him. And Adam Peters went on to basically talk about how he hung out with Sam Howell a couple of weeks ago and took a walk around the Commanders Park in the fields instead of like just sitting and talking in his office, because he says sometimes that kind of gets a little, not depressing, he used a different word for it, but it was something like, man, sometimes you just got to get out. Sometimes you just got to move around, walk around, get some fresh air type of thing. But basically he was just having a really long, nice conversation, getting to know Sam Howell and things like that, because it's not just what you put on tape. It's not just how high, how tall you are, how big you are, how fast you run. It's also who you are mentally and emotionally. And Adam Peters, I'm very happy that he's big on that. And he basically said that he likes what he sees in Sam Howell right now. But that does not mean start to buy Sam Howell being your starting quarterback in 2024 stock at all, because he said a few things that make you question that. If you're in the Sam Howell should be our starter for 2024 boat, I mean, after this press conference, I feel like if anything, it wasn't a lot of movement, positive and negative, but I feel like if anything, it netted a little negative. It sounds like we're even more likely to draft the quarterback number 2 overall after this press conference than even I thought before this press conference, just to let you know. So he did say some nice things about Sam Howell, but his clearest comment was an answer about how the 49ers found Brock Purdy. And he, at the end of it, said, quote, now I've got to find a new quarterback, unquote. And maybe that could include Sam Howell, because technically Sam Howell is a new quarterback to Adam Peters, who's just now taken over as GM just a couple of months ago. But, hey, man, that doesn't sound too good. I've got to find a new quarterback. And also, when talking about finding Brock Purdy, he said, quote, if we knew he was that good, we probably would have taken him sooner. Now I've got to find a new quarterback. So while complimenting Brock Purdy and was like, man, I mean, if I knew he would be that good, we wouldn't have waited till the 7th round to take him. And at the end of it, he said, now I got to find my next Brock Purdy, basically. And is Sam Howell that guy? Chances, but doubted. With the way that he talked about the quarterback position in general, and specifically Sam Howell today, it sounds like Sam Howell is probably gone, or at very best quarterback 2. Rep the District brings up a funny point. He literally quote tweeted that Brock Purdy quote that I just gave you from Adam Peters and said, a dagger for the Howlers, as this should be the nail in the coffin for any talk about building around Sam. It won't stop people, but it should. So just to warn y'all, man, I like Sam Howell a lot too as well, but unless Sam Howell was just elite, like just went out there and left no room for second guessing, a new owner, GM, head coach, offensive coordinator, everything is more than likely going to want to attach their name to a new quarterback, just period. Even just for something as silly as ego, like we drafted and developed that guy. You know, so I already knew that Sam Howell was more than likely not going to be our quarterback, just period. Even if Sam Howell balled out last year, it was still a chance that they would still take their own guy if we ended up with the number 2 overall pick. So I'm not surprised at all. And to make it even worse for Sam Howell, Adam Peters said with quarterback, in every position in football, you have to have as much competition as possible. So it sounds like he's talking about bringing in a draft quarterback to compete with Sam Howell at worst, or even maybe he's talking about bringing in a veteran quarterback like a Jacoby Brissett type of guy, maybe Jacoby Brissett specifically, even if they do take quarterback at number 2, and potentially having veteran quarterback drafted at number 2 overall, and Sam Howell in the building. But if anything, this sounds more like Sam Howell is likely to potentially stay here as a backup. And even if we take quarterback at number 2 overall, maybe they wouldn't want to trade him away. I mean, even with the 3rd round pick reports that we're hearing about Sam Howell's market right now, we could potentially get a 3rd for him or more. That was one report saying that. We'll see. But it just sounds like, man, Sam Howell, even if he does stick around, he's going to be a part of a big time quarterback competition. It may involve 3 people, not even just Sam Howell and drafted quarterback. And then Felix Tremel brings up a great point when also quoting that same quote, complimenting Brock Purdy, and Adam Peters said, now I've got to find a new quarterback. Felix said, here's the quote everyone is going on about. Peter said that they got to find the quarterback. They don't know who it is yet or if he's already on the roster currently, but they have a plan. Let it happen. And I agree with that. Like, as fans, of course, we're going to get excited and we're going to try to find any small clues and all of the little things that are said. We're going to try to dive deeper and dig under the surface on a lot of these quotes. But at the end of the day, man, we just got to let Adam Peters and those guys run the show. Let them do their thing. And let's not get too attached to either decision. Even though I prefer taking quarterback number 2 overall, and I do prefer Jayden Daniels over a Drake May. If we take Drake May, I'm still super excited. If they decide to trade back and stick with Sam Howell for the next year, I'm still excited. Either way, I'm not personally attached to what my favorite option is, because just more so than anything else, I'm very optimistic about what we're building here for the Commanders, and I'm just going to give them the big benefit of the doubt no matter what they decide to do, because I just trust and believe in them that much. I mean, they get paid millions of dollars to do this. They're doing this around the clock, every second of their waking day. I'm just assuming that with all of these elite minds that we brought in, front office and coaching staff, they're going to make the right decision. So again, Jayden Daniels number 2 overall is my favorite option, but I'm not one of those guys that's about to be attached to that option. If we don't end up with Jayden Daniels for one reason or another, it's not like I'm disappointed. I'm excited, and I'm going to be behind whatever they end up deciding to do with that number 2 overall pick, point blank, period. But he already said that they're already planning on doing quarterback interviews starting tonight and going into tomorrow and so on. So they are clearly doing extensive research into these draft quarterbacks. And would they necessarily be doing that amount of research if they didn't plan on taking a quarterback? And then he even said in a separate side interview after the Combine press conference that most of the things that we're talking about came from, he said that if you need a quarterback, this is a great quarterback draft. So, hey, man, good job at keeping it political and, you know, trying to stay surface with a lot of things, but boy. And he also went on to say, quote, there's a lot of ways to play the quarterback position effectively, but when you're mobile, it definitely gives you more options. So definitely something to think about. But also after that, he mentioned that mobility is great, but not necessary, and basically cited Kirk Cousins as a reason that you could still potentially be a good quarterback without being very mobile. But then he also went on to mention that Lamar Jackson presents a whole new world of problems and acknowledged the fact that having a guy like Lamar Jackson can have some big advantages. So he prefers mobility, but he's basically saying that it's not necessary, but he still prefers it. He still acknowledges the fact that, hey man, Lamar Jackson is something different over there. And I would, of course, love to have him. And then he also basically said that with all of these top quarterbacks having very similar talents, like arm strength, mobility, all of that type of stuff, what's really going to separate them is the nuance of the position, like I briefly mentioned earlier, and that it basically goes beyond the tape. The interviews seem like they will pretty much be really big on who we end up picking number 2 overall, especially since he mentioned interviews in another quote that I brought up earlier. He mentioned interviews like more than once today. Like, it's not like I'm just randomly bringing this up later in the video, like I'm not organized or something like that. He mentioned interviews at one part, mentioned interviews again later on and things like that. He's really big on interviews, and that's probably going to be the deciding factor between who we take and who we don't take. Because again, a lot of these guys, I mean, we're out here comparing greatness to greatness. Because again, I prefer Jayden Daniels, but I feel like Drake May has the potential to be a great quarterback as well. I feel like it's so marginal of a difference between the guys. I can see why Adam Peters feels like, if anything, is going to be more so who they are as a person, as the leader, and all of that type of stuff, and the nuance and all of the, like, it's really your mental and emotional more than anything else. IQ awareness, all of that type of stuff. They're probably going to run through like example plays, do some all 22, put them into some interesting situations and see how they react and answer those questions. That's more than likely going to be how we end up drafting a quarterback. I mean, the tape matters a lot, but at the end of the day, man, I can see scenarios where all 3 of these quarterbacks end up being great, like all of them, and pretty much you just like can't miss, especially if you put them in the right situations. Now, speaking of not being able to miss, Past mistakes from Adam Peters. He talked about the Trey Lance trade. He brought it up. He was like, yeah, man, let's do it. He said, quote, any trade is a data point. I think the world of Trey, there's a lot of different things with him or with anybody that go into levels of success you have. I did learn a lot from that trade, unquote. So first of all, I want to talk about this Trey Lance trade in the light of, I mean, the fact that they spent all of that draft capital to trade up and get a quarterback, and the quarterback didn't work out, and they still made it to the Super Bowl, if anything, is more of a compliment to Adam Peters than if that whole Trey Lance thing didn't happen. And then also, most importantly, he said that he's learned from it. And basically, they're going to evaluate quarterbacks differently. And that's probably why he's emphasizing interviews and mental and all of that type of stuff, nuanced things. Because remember, Trey Lance didn't have a lot of starts entering the draft, and all of these guys have started a lot of games. All of these guys have started more than double the games that Trey Lance started before he came out. So that's one big difference. And Adam Peters is basically like, I mean, if you think about it, just like the whole 28-3 with the Falcons thing with Dan Quinn, if anybody in life would ever not let that happen again, is Dan Quinn. If anybody were to never make that mistake again, who just feels it and has to wake up every day feeling that and just has that heavy on their mind, if there's anybody that knows exactly how to avoid that ever happening again, you can trust this Dan Quinn. And same thing goes with the Trey Lance situation with Adam Peters. After getting burned like that, and first of all, again, the fact that they got burned like that and still made it to the Super Bowl so quickly. It wasn't like a 5 to 10 year rebuild after you missed on quarterback that you spent all that draft capital to trade up for. But I've already talked about that. But if there's anybody who would not make that same Trey Lance mistake again, it's Adam Peters after being burnt by it. So I have full faith that we're going to make the right decision when it comes to quarterback, whether it's taking somebody at number 2, who we take at number 2, or if we don't take a quarterback at number 2 overall, we'll see. And then now moving on to no tags and Cameron Curl, and I feel like a lot of people are probably here pulled up to this video, clicked on this video for this part especially. I feel like most people were here for quarterback, and I feel like the other half is probably here for Cameron Curl. Well, first of all, Adam Peters said that he will not use the franchise or transition tag this year. So basically, if we're not able to get a deal done with any of our unrestricted free agents like Cameron Curl, Antonio Gibson, Kendall Fuller, Curtis Samuel, any of those guys, Khalid Hudson, well, I mean, I've already done a full breakdown of which players could potentially get franchise tagged. And there's a very short list of guys that were even franchise taggable, like as far as was it worth it. And I love Khalid Hudson. I want to bring him back really bad as a linebacker, but he wasn't franchise tag worthy. He wasn't a franchise tag candidate. And that goes for a lot of our unrestricted free agents like James Smith-Williams and Casey Toohill. But still, now we know all of that doesn't matter anymore. At this point, we know that we will not use the tag no matter what on any of these guys. Now, granted, they could change course and maybe things change, but as of right now, it sounds like they will not do it. But most importantly, Adam Peters said that they have now already had talks with Cameron Curl's representatives, and they're exploring options right now. I mean, he's an unrestricted free agent, so when you're talking options, trade is not one of them. So I guess when we're talking options, we're talking about different types of contracts, like the amount of years, even just outside of the amount of money, the amount of years, maybe certain finesses like void years or something like that. Because if he was currently on the team, if we were talking about extending him and he wasn't a 2024 unrestricted free agent, when you say options, then my mind immediately goes to, well, maybe they're considering trading him away because like we're just not seeing eye to eye on contracts. But this guy's an unrestricted free agent. The only options are you sign him or you don't. So when you're saying there's multiple options out there, it sounds like they're trying to figure out some finesses to the contract that could potentially make both parties happy and they can agree on something. So he said, quote, I could just say from playing against him when I was in San Francisco, he was always one of the best players on defense, a guy we had to watch out for, a guy we had a game plan for. So a lot of respect for him. I've heard great things about him. We're going to definitely explore that and see if it fits our overall plans, unquote. So there goes big compliments towards Cameron Curl right there. He respects him. He really likes him. And just having to go against him, he's like, hey, man, that's a guy that I would prefer to play with than against. So does that increase the chances of us signing Cameron Curl to a long-term contract? Maybe yes, but it doesn't guarantee it. And again, just real quick, if we were to franchise tag Cameron Curl, then he probably would have been like a 17.1 cap hit this season. Transition tag would have been a $13.8 million cap hit this season. But again, they don't plan on doing that. But I'm bringing those numbers up to basically point out the fact that a lot of people, when it comes to long-term contracts, typically they start with their minimum annual value being the same exact number as the tag that they could potentially get put on. So basically, from Cameron Curl's point of view and his agent, if he were to get franchise tag, he would be making $17.1 million this season. So basically, in most cases, not everybody, maybe not even most, but a lot of cases, a lot of players and agents basically start there in negotiations as like a base, as a minimum. I need to be making at least $17.1 million per year in my next contract, just because that's what my franchise tag would have been. Which again goes back to the point that I brought up in my video where I broke down how the salary cap increasing further than what people expected, if anything, actually hurts us because everything is relative. And now that we have more money to spend, NFL agents and players are basically, all they hear is, now the Commanders have more money to spend. So before that salary cap increase, we were maybe willing to take this much per year in a contract. Now, after that salary increase, we want a little bit more per year in contract. It's percentages. We want a certain percent, not necessarily a certain number. We want a certain percent of your salary cap because we feel like we're owed that. It's a market. Everything's relative. Everything's being compared to each other. There's percentages, all of that type of stuff. So just to give y'all that warning. But right now, Spot Track has his market value at $14.4 million per year, which would make him the 5th highest paid safety and the 138th highest paid player overall. Again, $14.4 million per year. That's less than what I think he's probably going to end up getting, because again, a lot of players start base minimum per year long-term wise what their franchise tag would have been. And basically, they're projecting him to get a 4-year, $57 million contract. But who knows? Maybe even if it's not 17 per year, maybe the way that they set it up, like it's like around 14 million this year, it may be 17 million next year. And then maybe annually, it isn't 17 million over the course of his long-term contract, but maybe like very soon, maybe starting next year, he could be hitting that 17 million. We'll see. Who knows, man? But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video, all of the different topics that Adam Peters touched on. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of his points. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the analysis that I had about his points. Am I jumping to conclusions anywhere? Am I over-exaggerating anything? Let me know how y'all feel about everything. I really appreciate the feedback, because again, even if it's like a disagreement, as long as you let me know why and things like that, I always take everything into account. I really appreciate y'all, good or bad, in the comments. Really do, man. So let me know all of that. Of course, make sure you stiff arm that like button on the way out. It's free for y'all, but it means the world to me. So please leave a like on the way out. And of course, stiff arm that subscription button and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Again, I'm doing like 2-3 videos a day, so make sure you have that bell clicked in, because if you don't, you may get the notification like 3 days after I release the video, and a lot of the times you may not get a notification for every video, because again, I'm doing like 2-3 videos a day. YouTube is like, well, if you don't have that bell clicked in, you must not really want to know when these videos are coming out. So we'll probably tell you about like 1 out of every 5 or 6 videos. Maybe you'll get a notification for those. So make sure you have that bell clicked in, because that's really big on you finding out when I'm releasing these videos. Because I see in a lot of comments people asking me to do like a video on a certain topic, and like I literally just did like 2-3 days ago, but I guess a lot of people didn't see it. So make sure you hit that bell next to the subscription button, all of that. And I really appreciate y'all. Again, once I'm just not as busy, I'm trying to work on getting to the comment sections of these videos, even going back as far as a couple of weeks ago. So stay tuned. I'm gonna catch y'all later. More content on the way, a whole bunch of fun video ideas, a lot of deep dives, free agency draft, all of that. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.